Hello, everyone. Before we get into this story, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Turn your notifications on so you will know when I post another video of different stories, different chapters, just all things story time. So we're gonna get you started on Game of Leo, and we're doing chapters 1 and 2. They're about 5.5 minutes each. We're gonna get you started there. So let's get into the video.
Deep in the countryside of South Carolina lies the little town of Chester, and in the middle of a school day at Chester High, Leo Preston was called to the counselor's office. "Mr. Fry, will you please send Leo Preston to my office?" stated the counselor in a very melodious voice. Mr. Fry turns from the whiteboard and turned his eyes towards Leo and said frustratedly in a grumbly voice, "Leo, you heard Counselor Moto. You need to go ahead and head to her office with you constantly interrupting my class." Leo says to himself, "I wonder what Counselor Moto wants to discuss with me. And besides, I did nothing wrong, so why am I always singled out?" As he begins lifting his books and getting up from his desk, he looks at Mr. Fry and says, "Yes, sir, I'm on my way now." Mr. Fry looks at him and says, "As soon as you're done, come back and get someone to give you the notes. Or just don't worry about coming back today, because I will give you a failing grade anyway." Leo stops after a few steps, after hearing Master Fry make his comments, and students around the class chuckle at what was said. Leo thinks to himself, is he singling me out because of that? No, it can't be because of that. There's no way it can be because of that. As he continues to walk out of the classroom into the hallway, he hears Mr. Fry say, "I sat him in the front of my classroom, and yet he still complains that he can't read what I have written. Why is he in my class?" Leo walks down the hallway with his head down, feeling saddened because of what he has heard from his teacher. The reason why he feels so down is because Leo Preston is legally blind. So when he says that he can't see something, it's not because he's illiterate. It's because he truly has a difficult time seeing things because of his visual impairment. As he gets halfway down the hallway, closer to the counselor's office, he hears a very familiar voice beside the stairwell giggling. He stops by the stairwell and looks through the doorway to see his girlfriend, Hannah, and one of the biggest bullies of the entire school, Chris, hugging and kissing. Chris says, "I bet that loser doesn't even know what kind of treasure he has in you. I bet he doesn't get that more than anything in this world. You are the best thing going in his entire life." Hannah responds to Chris, "Of course he doesn't know what he has. He is truly a loser. And the first chance I get, I will be dumping that sucker because I'm tired of not having somebody strong enough to love me." Chris chuckles, then said, "Yeah, well, after school, you and I will get to go back to my place, and I'll really show you how a man should love you." Hannah responds, "That makes me very excited, so I can't wait to see what you got for me." Hannah leans forward to kiss Chris, and as soon as their lips meet, Leo steps out and says, "What the hell are you doing? Is this what you really think of me? I can't believe I have given you 3 years of my life, and this is what you really think of me." Hannah and Chris separate quickly. They both look at Leo. Hannah, with a shocked expression, says, "Leo, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be in class right now?" Chris begins laughing, then says, "Well, well, well. Look, the loser has finally caught on to a bit of truth. I was going to come look for you later this afternoon, just to rub everything in your face. But now you have saved me the trip by allowing me to get to do it right now." Leo, with sadness in his face and a tear welling up in the corner of his eye, looked at Hannah and said, "Well, you don't have to worry about anything else because now I know how you feel and what you really think. I won't waste any more of your time, so I'm out of here." Leo turns around and continues walking down the hallway to the counselor's office. Hannah steps out of the stairwell, looks towards Leo and yells, "You don't deserve me, you loser. I never cared about you, and I am sick of always being there to pretty much get nothing from you. You don't deserve me, and I am done with you." Chris steps out and says laughingly, "You loser, you better know what's going to happen when I see you after school. I'm sick and tired of holding back on what I want to do, and what I'm going to do to you. Hannah has always held me back from putting my hands on you, but this time, nobody can save you from what I'm going to do to you." Leo stopped, turned around, and said to Chris, "You think you're Mr. Bad, but the only bad thing about you is not only your attitude, but that butterface and Dr. Evil head of yours, walking around always smelling like pickles." Then he looks at Hannah and says, "I treated you like a goddess, but that's okay. I deserve better, and one day you will get yours." Leo turned back around and continued walking to the office. Chris sneers with a very angry and ugly expression on his face, looks at Leo's back and yells, "This afternoon, I will beat you down. You will understand what the hell pain truly means." Leo shakes his head and says under his breath, "Yeah, right. Like I'm going to be here all day. Long enough for you to eventually get your hands on me. How dumb do you think I am?" Leo makes it to the office. He walks in and heads directly to Counselor Moto's door. Once he stood directly in front of it, he knocked. Leo knocks on the door. He hears Counselor Moto say in a very sweet, melodious voice, "Come in." He opens the door, slowly steps into the room, and looks around the room, trying to spot where she was. Counselor Moto looks at Leo and says, "Hello, Mr. Preston. I'm glad that you are able to make it into my office today. Why don't you please take a seat? Because I have many things I would like to discuss with you." Leo walks over to a chair that's in front of Counselor Moto's desk and sits down. Leo says, "Yes, Miss Moto. So may I ask exactly why I was called up to the office? And then did I do something wrong to make Mr. Fry want to speak very rudely to me and about me?" Counselor Moto says, "What do you mean exactly? What happened between you and Mr. Fry today?" Leo responds, "Well, he decided, because you called me to the office, that he would speak very rudely to me and state that if I wasn't able to make it back to the class, he would just fail me anyway." Counselor Moto looks at Leo, shockingly, and says, "There anything else that he said?" Leo responds with, "As I was leaving the room, he decided to say in front of the class that he sat me in the front row of the class and that I still couldn't do the work. So why was I in his class?" Counselor Moto grits her teeth and replied with, "He said what?" Leo continues informing her of the comments that were said and the feeling that he felt from hearing what Mr. Fry stated. Counselor Moto slams her fist onto the desk, stands up quickly, and says to Leo angrily, "You have nothing to worry about because I will definitely be addressing this situation with the principal, making sure that Mr. Fry doesn't continue stepping out of line in such a way again." Leo lowered his head with a sad expression on his face, looking as if he was fighting tears from spilling from his eyes. Counselor Moto calms herself down by taking a deep breath and says, "Well, as I said, it will definitely be addressed by the principal. But something I do want to speak to you about is towards your grades. You seem to be struggling not only in Mr. Fry's class, but in almost all of your subjects. And we need to figure out the best way for you to be able to pick your grades up so that you won't flunk this year and be held back when it comes to graduation time." Leo continued holding his head down with a sad expression, saying, "I know. I have to do better somehow, some way. But I really am trying my best. It's just I don't have the exact resources to assist me when it comes to things being written on the board, or any way to express how it could make each class easier without the teacher getting upset at me." Counselor Moto responds with, "Have you tried asking your teachers if they could possibly give you a copy of what they were going to write on the board? Or if possible, that you wait until after school to be able to get a copy of all the notes?" Leo responds with, "I've tried, but the first teacher that I approached shut the idea down instantly." Counselor Moto looked at Leo with a shocked expression and said, "Which teacher?" Leo responded with, "It was Mr. Fry. He didn't want to hear anything that I had to say when it came to me getting to make any improvements as far as passing his class. So after I tried with him, I felt completely defeated and didn't want to try with any other teachers, feeling as if I was going to be shot down instantly." Counselor Moto shook her head in disgust, saying to Leo, "We're going to come up with something to help you improve your grades." Leo looks up to Counselor Moto and says somewhat pathetically, "I definitely appreciate what you're trying to help me do." Counselor Moto looks at Leo with a half smile upon her face and says, "No problem, Mr. Preston. You know that's actually a part of my job description." Leo looks at Counselor Moto and says, Miss Moto, you don't have to call me Mr. Preston. You can call me by my first name, Leo. You are my counselor, and yet you're not that much older than me. Counselor Moto looks at Leo with a surprised look on her face and says, Okay, well, Leo, if that's what you prefer to be called, that's what I will do. And you're right. I am not that much older than you. I am only 24 years old. Leo looks at Counselor Moto surprisingly and says, Oh, wow. You really aren't that much older. But I definitely appreciate you speaking to me as if I was a human being, Miss Moto. Counselor Moto looks at Leo in his eyes and says, If there's anything that I can do for you, all you have to do is inform me. Leo nods his head and responds with, Truly, thank you. There is something I also would like to discuss with you, Miss Moto. Counselor Moto looks up at Leo with a half smile upon her face and says, What seems to be the problem? I have a problem with another student who wants to cause me harm. Counselor Moto gasps and then states, What student might that be? Leo responds, His name is Chris Twerk. Counselor Moto looks at Leo and softly shakes her head, as that particular name is mentioned on a daily basis. Leo continues, As I was walking to the office to come speak with you, I saw him and my girl, well, my ex-girlfriend now, making out in the stairwell and discussing me in the harshest of ways. Counselor Moto frowns and says to Leo, Why didn't you report that to me as soon as you came in? Leo responds, Because at that moment I didn't see any purpose in me mentioning that, when I knew you had something much more important to speak to me about. Counselor Moto then says, Well, that's something else I will definitely handle as soon as we're done talking here. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and send you home early, because you seem to have had a very eventful day. Leo looks at her with a shocked expression, saying to her, Thank you, Miss Moto. I definitely appreciate this. Both Leo and Counselor Moto stand and walk towards her office door. Leo steps out of Counselor Moto's office, walks over to the front office desk and signs out for the rest of the day to leave school. As Leo walks out of the office, he walks through the hallways, heads to the front door, and walks out of the front door of Chester High School. He gets in contact with a rideshare through his phone. He gets a response immediately, stating, Thank you for using pickup. Your driver today will be Cammy Ryder. 2 minutes later, she pulls up blaring some music. Leo steps.
So that's the first two chapters. Stay tuned for the rest.